Now, I'm going to say something, and this is really going to hurt in our industry. We're digital immigrants, okay? 4.0, while people have heard it, there are only a handful of factories that have really achieved the level of 4.0 integration. Okay. The culture of an organization is the currency of that organization. People withhold knowledge, share knowledge, do things, they don't things, all based upon the culture of that organization. If an organization has ever created a system or a feeling or distrust where somebody freely shared that knowledge, then immediately they suffered from it, that they were dismissed, that they received lower compensation, less benefits, less recognition, whatever the case is. The culture of an organization has to shift to actually valuing people. And valuing people is something that is very difficult. It's
Welcome to Verify in Field, the Millwork podcast. Your host, Jacob Edmond, CEO of Ductworks, will be interviewing experts in the industry to bring you insights and knowledge about the latest trends, techniques, and challenges in millwork. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the world of millwork. Here's Jacob.
Good morning, Joseph. Thank you for joining me today on Verify in Field.
Thank you for having me on this podcast. Certainly excited, looking forward to our discussion.
Absolutely. So today we have Joseph Baggett, and he is president of Innovative Wood Process Solutions. And I think to get started, could you tell us just a little bit about your background, how you got into the millwork industry, and then how you got started in your own company of consulting with millwork companies?
Sure. So back in the mid-90s, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I got out of college, and a friend of mine said, well, come work in the furniture factory. So I went to work at Superior Furniture in Belton, Texas, making office furniture. And one of the first things, or the very first thing I started, they bought an ERP system called Cymex. So you'll have to be above 30 years old, maybe, to remember exactly what that was. And they put this huge manual on my desk and told me that was my first job, was to implement an ERP system. And I said, hey, I don't know how to make office furniture. Can I learn how to make office furniture first? That said, for the last almost 30 years, putting in woodworking operations for furniture, cabinets, caskets, wood components, specialty wood products, some byproducts, has been my job. And the last 5 years has been with the company that we started, Innovative Wood Process Solutions, back in January of 2019.
Okay.
And during that time, some industry friends really highly encouraged me to start an engineering and consulting firm. A friend of mine named Mark Raymond had a consulting firm that was specifically geared towards the wood industry, and he retired. And he highly encouraged me to do this along with some others. So we started work with a select group of clients, and we built the company up to a group of 7 people. And a little over 100 clients in 5 different countries and about 37 states here in the U.S.
Okay. Awesome. And so what does the consulting that you do with your clients today look like? When you're first engaging with a client, what are they coming to you for help with, and how do you start helping them?
So obviously, a lot of our engagements start off with a problem of some sort. It can be a crisis, or it can be something where, okay, we're going to have to do something we've never done before. We need to learn how to make something, how to do something, how to implement something. Or it can range from a scenario of, hey, we've never made frameless cabinets before. We have to make frameless cabinets now. we need somebody to help teach us how to make frameless cabinets, to scale. And so the group of people we've put together on our website is, like I said, 7 people now, but it's a wide but deep group of specialties. They're a group of industry veterans, from C-level people to people like my dad, Richard, who has a master's degree in organizational development. And so a lot of times our engagement starts in a conversation about one of those items. They've got a big problem, um, something they need to fix. And either we help them focus on what that is, or we come in and do an assessment. And sometimes we help work on other things that are maybe not the initial starting point of the conversation. What we are seeing um, that's driving a lot of our engagements is since 2001, the industry's lost, 38% of its employees and 32% of its companies. And so companies are having to engage different people groups than were traditionally in the industry. And they're having to train people where before they could hire trained people. And they're having to put in processes and almost relearn, or sometimes learn for the first time, manufacturing processes, machinery, tooling, finishing, etc., with a whole new group of people.
Mhm.
And so the opportunity to train, share expertise, manufacturing methods for businesses that are scaling, moving, shutting down, changing due to those things that are happening in our industry, that adaptive challenge is huge. And it leads to a lot of different opportunities.
Right. You those stats you mentioned, where do you get stats like that?
So a lot of them are available if you have the time to go to the NACIS website. This is something our company does. So our purpose, we don't have a mission, but our purpose is to inform, inspire, equip, and empower leaders in the wood industry to achieve the highest value.
Awesome.
We put a lot of this research together and publish it on a regular basis. The stats that I just cited to you were shared at our annual event in Dallas. And there are a lot of things like that that are affecting and will affect even to a greater degree our industry.
Yeah. So that annual event, is that an annual event for your clients?
It was. We're going to probably open it up this next year. It was not only just for clients and a few industry friends, I have to be sure and say that, but it was mostly for people in Texas.
Yep.
And this year we'll open it up. Obviously, we have lots of clients outside the state of Texas, even the U.S. We'll open the event up to a much larger group of people. That said, we send out regular emails through Constant Contact, and then produce a quarterly newsletter. And that same information is usually disseminated to those channels as well.
Nice. Okay. And so you mentioned you have a team. There's other people that work with your company and engaging. So are there ever times where a client will come with you and have a need for something that maybe you don't have expertise in currently, and you're partnering or going out and seeking expertise? Or that comes up, I guess, from time to time, but your overall mission, I guess, is whatever the client's problem related to manufacturing is, we can go and find that expertise and help solve the problem.
This is true. I mean, the truth is you can't be an expert in everything, The internet has enabled a large group of people to think that they're experts. And while the internet offers so much information, it causes two problems. It gives us the delusion that we can learn enough about a subject to think that we're right. But the fallacy in it is that we can't experience enough about a subject to know when we're wrong. And the massive amount of information that's available on the internet today gives the delusion that anybody can be an expert in anything. It's simply not the truth. And so But what we've noticed is that sometimes we do encounter problems that are outside of our wheelbox, even with the group of 7 people that we have. Um, Whenever we look at a problem and we look at expertise to focus to help people with that, we have a larger, broader network of people, even than these 7 people, team members, that many times you're drawn in for air permitting. We've got 2 big environmental consulting firms nationwide that we bring in whenever we need to go deep on air permitting, like for finishing sawdust emissions, that type of thing. That said is, and this will shock everybody, in most engagements, only about 15%, maybe 20% of the time is actually specifically geared towards direct transmission of technical expertise, training, showing, developing, making, teaching. The rest of it is dealing with the organization, with all of the doubt, the fear, we've done it this way, who's going to do this?
The
The
change
rest of the
management.
time is dealing with the organization and getting it ready to actually affect the change, and to be able to put technical expertise to use and gain result within the organization.
Yeah. So I would call that change management, which there's
Sure.
a
That's
whole lot of documentation and writing and kind of studying on that topic. But
mhm.
that's very important, because I think a lot of people, probably clients, first come to you thinking, hey, you're just going to impart technical knowledge to us and we're going to go use that technical knowledge. Everything's going to be great. But really, the heavy lift comes in that change management of like, hey, how do we
Without a doubt.
change the behaviors of the people? And it's one thing to, hey, yep, we agree with what you're telling us and that makes sense. But it's another to actually change your behaviors and how the organization works. So, you said you started this company in 2019, right?
Yes.
And obviously, so pre-COVID, you've seen, I assume, a lot of things change through the years of COVID now and beyond. Are there some things, that have changed in what you offer as services, or the things that clients are asking for help with over the last few years? Or is it more just kind of cumulatively, you've learned as you've worked with clients and you're imparting more things as you go?
So obviously, exposure changes for you. You can take the stats, but then looking at anecdotal evidences actually being in facilities. So this year, I think that I was only in about 54, 55 different woodworking facilities across the the globe. Last year, I was in almost 100.
Oh, wow.
And so I tell people, look, I think that's above average exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And I still see things that I've never seen or heard of before, both good and bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so when people go and they look at facilities, they look at the software, they look at the machinery, they look at the physical hard things. Sometimes they'll do a plant tour and then they want to go and copy exactly what they saw and replicate it in their facility. And I tell them this is one of the worst things you can possibly do. If you see somebody being successful, that's just the encouragement to pursue and achieve your own success. Right. And so how we've grown since 2019 is we have a very holistic approach when we're looking at helping clients. And we want to make sure that they're informed as much as possible. And then to inspire people, you really have to gain their trust. And to gain people's trust, sharing information, creating shared experiences, obviously doing things for people that are of value, but also being honest with people and discussing hard things that everybody seems to be managing their businesses around. And this adaptive challenge that we're experiencing, COVID, I want to make sure and answer that specific question. COVID accelerated things that were already happening in our industry. It was just an accelerant. Everybody wants to talk about COVID this, COVID that. Okay. Well, uh, in I wish I could put up so stuff on the screen here, but if you look at there's two things that COVID really, really showed. You had a trend that started in the late 90s and the early 2000s where our industry started to become less productive. And when I say productive, I'm talking about the number of direct labor hours in the content of the unit of what is being produced. During that time, wages began to normalize closer to industry averages, general industry averages. So your dollars per hour went up and your hours per unit of what you were producing, durable goods, began to disassociate in a graph. Your dollars per hour began to go up, and then your productivity began to go down. During that period, from late 90s to 2000, you had a massive number of people that left the industry. The furniture industry essentially went to China. You had all kinds of imports that took place across the wood industry to Asia. And so there were many, many things that happened that took experience and knowledge out of the industry by people leaving the industry for multiple demographical reasons, multiple geopolitical reasons. And so during COVID, you saw this trend that was going like this, and your productivity was separating your dollars per hour that you were paying people. And then from 2019 to 2021, it didn't just separate, it completely separated. I mean, it went in two opposite directions. During COVID, we had a demand that was a blip on a screen. And so we responded to that demand. During those 3 years, the industry as a whole spent almost $3 billion on automated woodworking machinery, software, et cetera. It was the largest investment in the industry, in the total industry, in a 3-year period in its history. During that time, as an industry, we actually became less productive. We put more hours per unit into what we were producing. And so the automation only kept up with this crazy demand. People went and bought furniture, they bought cabinets, they bought all kinds of durable wood goods during COVID as crazy demand. And so that's what exacerbated that separation between productivity in hours per unit and dollars per hour. The demand is leveling off. It has been leveled off, and we can talk about all those type of projections. But what happened during that period of time is it accelerated the demographical and geographical phenomenon. If you look at the net migration, there are things that happened during that period that have never happened in the history of the United States. You had a net negative migration from California, New York, Pennsylvania. You had states that either have never had one or had a slight one. And all those people are relocating, creating demand to South Central and Southern states, maybe some Midwestern relocation as well. But it's driven up this demand, and that's not done yet. So the demand for all these durable wood goods continues to be supported by many things that are happening. The baby boomers are retiring. People are picking up and moving. These things have created demand. At the same time, the average age of the wood industry is 48 years old. Okay, now that doesn't seem like very old, but if you look at general industry, the average age is 38 years old. So on average, our industry, total workers, total laborers, not just people on the floor, the whole 9 yards, we are 10 years older than the average worker in general industry. So if you look at two things, and there's John Burns Real Estate Investing, I think they're consulting now. We do a lot of work with them. They have a very compelling case, right, for a forever labor constraint. And there are some demographical facts that support this. And so as we have this extreme need to automate. We want to buy ourselves every problem. We want to buy automated machinery. We want to buy software. We want to buy all those things. A huge investment, record investment put in. People are still struggling to figure out, how do I take this workforce, which it's not changing. It's not going away. How do I take that and integrate that with machinery, software, and create a culture in an organization where we have sustainability and scalability?
So let me just see if I can repeat back to you kind of a summary of what you said, if I understood it correctly.
Sure.
Some highlights, because you shared a lot of really good information. But there was a record investment in our industry, specifically on automation and machinery and things like that, right? Largely through the last few years through COVID.
2019 to 2021.
Okay. In addition, during that time, cost of labor and productivity or efficiency have separated, right?
That is correct.
Are those, is productivity affected by the cost of labor going up? Are they related inversely? Or they're
no,
okay.
They're not inversely related. So
Okay.
the two things, one is that because our industry had shrunk so much, typically whenever people needed employees, they went and hired people that are already trained from another woodworking company down the street.
Mm-hmm.
That is no longer available,
Right.
not in the scale that people were traditionally. So you had to hire untrained people. The second part is that those people that you were hiring were younger than ever.
Right.
The average person that you were hiring that was not trained, not a part of the industry, was younger than ever. Third thing, as people put in automated machinery and software, the people they were hiring that were not trained, it was based upon a model that was heavily based upon skilled craftsmen. So the people coming in are not skilled craftsmen. And we make this huge investment in machinery, software, et cetera. The ability to take brand new people, record demand, and put them together with software and machinery, it didn't result in anything other than keeping up with demand. Now, this is a very large generalization. There's companies that this does not fit.
Right.
And so I don't want everybody here to say, hey, that's not us. Well, that might be true. But there are trends that are true when you look at the NACIS data for furniture, cabinets, durable wood goods. So where you have a company that, hey, this doesn't fit us at all, we're completely, guess what? There's 3 or 4 that it does fit, that statistically is drawing in the industry companies over that are making a huge difference. So I don't want to make that clarification as well.
Yeah. So a couple of things there. One, you mentioned that the average age of our industry is 10 years older than
That's correct.
the greater population average. Even despite the fact that we've had to recruit and hire younger new talent than ever before.
That's correct.
And so that means that our skilled talent within this industry are even older than 10 years average, above the average.
So the skilled talent, we surveyed 1,000 companies, right? And if you look at the skilled talent, these are people that you can just say, here, go make me this desk, go make me this cabinet,
Mm-hmm.
whether you have software involved or not, and they can go do it, right? I would say traditional skilled talent. Many times we see that average age is in the mid 50s.
Yep.
We have a client in High Point, North Carolina, and they're required. So they're like, hey, how do we grow this? How do we get all the brand? And we looked at it, and their average age, their total average age, is 57. So there's two things. If you look at in the U.S. right now, most people are retiring between the age of 63 and 65.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out, there are things that are changing. Now, there's other countries that have other average wages. Within this group of 1,000 companies, the age of traditional skilled craftsmen is usually between 55 and 60.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously so to combat this, because the very foundation of your business, I assume, is how are you helping your clients? overcome these obstacles in some form, right? I mean, you're not,
Sure.
I assume, necessarily staffing, but when they're coming to you, they're probably coming to you in a variety of ways of, hey, we've made this big investment. We're trying to recognize the return on investment of this, right? Or,
Sure.
hey, we've bought this machinery and we need the efficiency that we were told we were going to get. Can you help us with this? We've invested in this
Without a
software
doubt.
or this operating system, whatever it is, right? But there is an element there that is, no matter what it is, new machine, new system, new process, whatever, there's people have to run that, right? And I
Yes.
think that is the factor that Industry 4.0 and all the machinery companies and all of the industry as a whole has kind of either ignored or kind of just been oblivious to that factor, right? It seems like everybody's assumed that the people part will always be able to be figured out, and there's not really been any plan for it. And it's, I mean, because that's our core business at Ductworks, right? We offer out staffing and outsourcing solutions, right?
Sure.
And everything we do is providing trained, skilled drafting and design resources for people, because this is such a widespread problem, even greater than we predicted in the industry. And so it's okay. We're able to help relieve a little bit of this pain for our clients. But that manufacturing floor, like, can't be outsourced, can't be outstaffed. You can't be run remotely totally yet. There's just, everybody talks about lights out manufacturing, but it's this kind of like mythological creature that everybody's striving for and haven't achieved, or maybe some have, but not to the vision they anticipated. So can you talk a little bit about everything you just shared? How, when you're working with your clients, how are you working with them, and how are they attacking this these days?
So our job really, besides helping people with specific problems, right? Training people how to use software, developing catalogs, teaching them how to design and engineer their millwork, setting up finishing systems. I mean, sometimes we get pigeonholed. Like, you'll probably see a lot of myself sitting in front of finish lines on LinkedIn or other platforms. I love doing that, but in every scenario, you can buy whatever it is that you need, except for the organizational discipline and the culture to support those things. And achieving, getting the returns, getting all those things, always go back to those parts. We had a client that bought we helped them design the flat line. They installed it, and whenever they went to start it up, we said, okay, look, you got to have enough whip in here to keep this thing fed, right? You have to have enough work in process here. They said, okay. So we started it up. They had a little bit there. We put it on there. We finished it. And then they realized, okay, well, I really need like a half of a day or a shift of material here to put in front of this flat line to really get the benefit. And so all of a sudden they started trying to do that, and they realized, okay, well, we've got to change our schedule. We've got to change our manufacturing process. So helping move through that change management is one thing. And then the leadership that helps load the line efficiently, put parts close together, fill up the belt. All of a sudden, that's the very next thing. And then people realize that they don't have the leadership to say, okay, well, when we load the belt up, we're going to load it to 80%, plus efficiency. And so it's not that the machine has a mechanical issue. It's that the leadership and the processes to get that belt loading efficiency don't exist.
Right.
And so I'll bring back, in the same survey we did, we asked about how much processes that they had, each company, what they were documented, whether they were followed it, whether they had an actual quality system, work instructions. Did they have documented processes that were actually followed in manufacturing and business processes? And about 80% of the companies said they did not have any documented processes in manufacturing that were actually adhered to, kept up with, communicated, et cetera. About 10% said that they had some type of documentation that was loosely followed. And the remaining 10% said that they had actual documented systems that were in place and being followed and adhered to and updated and changed. So you have an industry that is still largely based upon tribal knowledge. The average age of the people that are skilled, traditionally skilled in doing these things, is basically over the age of 55.
Yeah.
And so that presents a significant challenge. And right now, the main effort is put into buying software, machines, tools, et cetera, to solve this adaptive challenge. And statistically, right now, as a whole industry, we are challenged in doing that on an economy of scale.
I agree. So from there's a lot of directions I kind of want to go with this, but because I've had a lot of similar experiences with what you're describing, because I've done a good amount of consulting just on engineering, staffing, and process, and almost every company kind of has some form of the same struggles, and a lot of the same assumptions. And it's just, hey, how do I solve this problem? If I could solve this problem, this is my bottleneck. And if I can make it not a bottleneck, I could have X more in revenue and throughput and all this stuff. Right. And it's kind of like in their head, it's very simple and formulaic. And it's what they ask from me, and I assume you often, is, okay, what do I need to spend? How much money do I need to spend on what to solve this problem? Right. And I think for a long time, the industry, and this goes back to, in my perspective, maybe it's different. A lot of it is the machinery manufacturers have kind of cast this vision that that's how it works. You spend $100,000 on a machine and suddenly you get this problem solved, right? And it's just as simple as that. You spend $1 million on this cell, and as it's shown there in Atlanta or Vegas or wherever, right? You get this combination of machines and you're now going to get what that company got, right? And as you've said multiple times so far, is like that doesn't solve the people in the change management. And what surprises me, even just from an engineering perspective, is so many owners will do that and they will spend the $1 million or whatever. And then they will, be frustrated about spending $3,000 on the seed of the software for the people to run it, right? To make it useful, right? They will not spend the week of training trip for the person to go get the knowledge to do it, right? And it's like, there's this huge void that comes back to people and labor. And it's, they think they're solving their labor problem. I think that's what a lot of it is they have this pain point going in of like, hey, I don't have enough people, or I don't have the right people, or I don't have the right skill set. So I'm going to solve that with this machine. All that does is just shift and create a new people problem that you still have to solve, right? It just changes the makeup of the people problem.
Yes.
And if anything, you're just narrowing now. Instead, now I've got some low skilled people that I need. I've got some high skilled. Now I only have fewer, but I have high skilled people that I need, and a more narrow type of them and a more narrow set of skills. And at the end of the day, nobody's making those people, is what I'm finding. Very few, if anybody. Nobody is there's no degree you can go to that's going to solve this problem of, hey, I can run a millwork manufacturing shop. From a very technical sound standpoint, it only comes from kind of hands-on experience. And I think what's funny to me is that those people, and I'm offending everybody today probably, but those late career people that are the technically skilled people we have today left in this industry, they got that skill not through a university, not through training. They got it through on the job learning, right? But at some point, the industry stopped doing that effectively. They stopped developing people through on the job training. And at some point, they shifted to poaching from each other. And hey, I can go hire somebody that already learned this from my competitor, right? And that came very common. And maybe that was a symptom of one of the stats you said earlier, that we've got 32% less companies or something. And so that made it easy. Like suddenly, hey, my competitor's going out of business. Let me grab all that talent, right? But somewhere along the way, we stopped developing people internally. We stopped hiring people out of high school. We stopped bringing people up. And then in 5 years, they're a shop supervisor, they're a machine operator, they're whatever, right? And there's not a career path within any of our companies. And so many owners look at, well, that's not my job. Somebody else can do that. And even when they come and talk to you, I assume it's very rare that a company will have a line item of training and development of, hey, how are we planning for when this person retires? Who do we have coming up? Is that just me, or does any of that resonate with what you've seen? You've talked to way more companies than I have.
Well, it does. And so let me point back. My main point earlier is the most valuable thing that any woodworking company can do is to create, standardize, and share knowledge within the organization. It's the single most important thing that they can do because of the adaptive challenge. There are no longer skilled people to go and get. And so the reality is that companies have to be responsible for creating systems that create, standardize, and share knowledge on a scalable level with the workforce that is available. That's a reality. We may hate it. We may not like it. But it's absolutely a reality. And so organizations are reinventing themselves to that reality. I was going to say, I wanted to say one point. You mentioned something there, and whether it's in the acquisition of equipment, software, et cetera, most of those things are looking at solving one, maybe two problems, right? And it's great. If people want to solve a problem and win one time, that's great. Systems are for people who want to solve problems and keep them solved and win repeatedly. And so back to the survey that we had is that most people don't have an actual working system to identify and solve problems. And so okay, we're going to go buy this one machine and it's going to fix this. We're going to do this one thing and it's going to fix this. That is a microcosm for how many businesses in our industry were started. And many businesses were started by craftsmen with a very simple set of machinery in a garage. What we're faced now with is that any business that's going to remain, not just in business, but relevant, scalable, right, has to be sustainable and scalable. And it's very difficult because that requires a completely different skill set than a craftsman that's making something to be self-employed or to have a few employees. It's much different than a scalable, sustainable enterprise. And we've seen very large companies come to critical mass and either go out of business, stop working, reorganize, et cetera. And they were based upon this. We're going to have a bunch of trained, skilled craftsmen, and we're going to solve one problem at a time. And I'm sorry, I know you were fixing to bring something else up.
That's great. I think I think there is, and it's worth, addressing here, because too often with this, we're talking about how important people are this. And it's a little bit of a oxymoron or contradiction because people are so important, process is also very important. And I think historically this industry depends on people at the expense of process. And so a lot of companies, their process is a person. It's, hey, we give this information to this person and they spit out something. We don't know what happens, which as you scale, you can't duplicate that person if you don't know how they do their job. And so what's imperative for a good process is that anywhere a person interacts with it, you're documenting it in a way that you can change that person out over time, right? That, hey, I just need X person to do these tasks and this is how those tasks should be done, right? And so I think that the change management part that becomes difficult to with that for many organizations and many leaders and managers is, well, I'm removing the person's value of saying they're replaceable. And we start to, a lot of smaller organizations especially feel like, well, I'm basically asking somebody to document themselves out of a job. And that's kind of the mentality a lot of times that people get stuck on is, okay, well, if I'm just creating a process and I'm having mindless worker bees, like where's the craftsmanship? And it's not a person, that's Peggy, that's Vicky. They've been with me for 20 years or whatever. Right. And people, I think, struggle getting over that and reconciling that mentality of, yes, it is still craftsman. Yes, that person still individually has value. And from my perspective, part of that is that's where, career planning and career path should be going of like, okay, if they truly are working themselves out of job and developing somebody else that they're going to delegate those tasks to, that frees them up to do the higher value stuff upstream.
Mhm.
Right. But a lot of people can't get through that mental hurdle, to get to the change management of, okay, now we've all agreed we need to do this and we logically understand and emotionally agree with this, where we're going. And so I think, like, do you encounter that as you're working with companies on this of like, they keep
Of course.
returning back to, well, no, so and so does that. And that is the process.
So I liked your word about that person as a process, and that cannot be farther from the truth. Um, as people, we forget things. We don't show up on time. We cause problems. We, we have feelings. There's all kinds of things. And so traditionally, people were looked at as their value to a company is what they could physically produce and how productively they could produce it and how accurately they could produce it. The paradigm now and the adaptive challenge that we face is if someone does have knowledge, if they have skill, if they have those things, the most valuable thing for them to do is to standardize it and share it. A person's value within an organization, whenever they replicate themselves, is greater than if they simply do it themselves. Now, I'm going to say something, and this is really going to hurt in our industry. We're digital immigrants, okay? 4.0, while people have heard it, there are only a handful of factories that have really achieved a level of 4.0 integration, okay? The culture of an organization is the currency of that organization. People withhold knowledge, share knowledge, do things, they don't things, all based upon the culture of that organization. If an organization has ever created a system or a feeling or distrust where somebody freely shared that knowledge, then immediately they suffered from it, that they were dismissed, that they received lower compensation, less benefits, less recognition, whatever the case is. The culture of an organization has to shift to actually valuing people. And valuing people is something that is very difficult. When I say it's difficult, it's not just giving people raises and all the rest of that is. Number one is you have to have trust within an organization. That is the foundation for great culture. So people have to be able to trust that if they do share the knowledge, if they are skilled craftsmen, if they know how to use software, they know how to run a flat line, if they share that information, that they will be valued. And not only that, it's a job security. All the things that relate to success within that organization have to be secure. There has to be 100% trust. If an organization has that, then not only having the systems in place, but then empowering people and inspiring people to then become the people that say, okay, you know what, I'm the table saw king, and I'm going to train 10 people on how to cut stuff on a table saw within a 30-second of accuracy. I'm the finishing king, and I'm going to train 10 people. So this will lead to my last point is that a lot of people have incentive programs, bonus programs, and they're all based upon performance. They're based upon getting a certain amount of yield, a certain level of productivity, all these things. And so we've seen is this huge disillusionment. More companies have abandoned incentive compensation programs in the wood industry in the last 5 years. It's almost at a record rate. They're just getting rid of them. And so when we looked at people and asked people, what is it driving this abandonment of this incentive comp? And we talked to the people. Basically, they said it wasn't fair. They couldn't rely on coworkers to reach these goals. And so then we asked, do you know what you actually had to do or who you had to become to reach those goals? Some people said yes. Some people said they didn't know. So what we've seen is a transition on those that are redefining and revisioning their incentive compensation programs to people that are not saying, hey, look, you know what, if you get another 5% better productivity, everybody gets a bonus. Rather, they are incentivizing the right thinking and the right behavior and the constant practice of the right thinking and the right behavior that would bring those results about. They're not incentivizing the results. They're incentivizing the right thinking and the right behavior and the practice of those things within the organization. So the biggest example of this, I think, is Al Moxie, who actually pay their people to read material that they believe is very important and discuss that material. They actually get paid to do that, right? I mean, that was one of it's several years old, but I was like, okay, you're gonna pay your people to learn to think, how to think the way that will be the most valuable to the company. That said, is you have to have an environment of trust and safety for the traditional craftsmen over the age of 55 to freely share that knowledge within the organization, standardize it, systemize it, build it.
Yep. No, I think that's huge. And I mean, it goes to basically, I'm struggling to remember the book that I read about wildly important goals. And there's the idea of leading and lagging metrics. And essentially what you're describing is that companies use their incentive pay, often to incentivize lagging metrics, the results, as opposed to leading metrics of like, hey, if we invest in this, we know that we're going to get the result we want anyway. So let's incentivize the behavior that yields the result, essentially, the leading metric. This has been way more interesting than I anticipated, Joseph. I am really interested. So you've mentioned a couple times this survey. Is this something that you publish to clients or people?
We do.
Okay.
We do.
If people are interested in this, is there a way that they can get it or become a client?
I'm sure that there could. I'm going to have to speak with my wife. She owns 51% of our company.
So I
make
think
sure that we're okay with that. There was more for our purposes. But
yeah,
I'm sure if people were interested, we could share some of the information with them.
Awesome. Is that something you do on a regular basis, like annual? Or?
Not right now.
No.
Some of it may filter into the quarterly newsletter that we publish.
Okay.
Mostly it had been put together to share specifically at our events that were attended in person.
Awesome. I have two questions that I like to ask every guest, and I'm really interested. You've kind of mentioned some of this, but the first is, what do you see changing in our industry over the next 5 to 10 years?
So a couple things. One is some of these demands that we've seen are going to normalize for durable wood good products. The baby boomers are going to retire. They're the richest generation that's ever existed in the history of the world. And they're going to retire. They got a ton of cash. They're going to continue to drive a lot of the high-end market. If they haven't already, they're going to build their forever home. They're going to dispense this huge wad of cash that they have. Everybody thinks they're going to pass it along. That's great. The government sitting there like Johnny Bench waiting to take their 40%, through an inheritance tax. So you're going to see a lot of spending by the baby boomers in the next 10 years, continued spending. the labor situation will continue to be constrained. It'll actually continue to become even more constrained. There's a lot of statistics that support that. The main thing that could change it is, um, abbreviated, increased, sped up immigration. Um, that's just something, uh, outsourcing, and importing, as these markets can continue to be forced into things, people are going to look to outsourcing, uh, components, anything that they feel like they can build with. If they can only get 50 people in their factory and they can outsource the stuff where they only need 25, that'll continue to happen. And a lot of people are like, hey, it's a make versus buy thing. It's going to become less of, or are we going to be in business or not? Are we going to actually be able to serve our client? Because we can only have this many people in the location that we're at.
Yeah.
So outsourcing and then importing. And so obviously we have, issues with China. We had, the KCMA won their big trade case and there's something like that, but importing will continue to be explored and tried industry wide, not just across, Southeast Asia, but India is making a huge push to be able to supply the U.S. with durable wood goods and components. Turkey, Africa, South America. So you'll continue to see that become more and more part of a thing. But again, the adaptive challenge is, if you have a market and you can sell at a certain price and do all the rest of that, then being able to consistently and scalably make it will be the challenge. And so the continued strained workforce and the reduction in skill level on that workforce will be the adaptive challenge that we'll face. People will continue to invest heavily in technology. If we think we can solve a problem through automation, software, et cetera, we'll continue to do that, to a point that the companies will run out of cash, market, the things that funnel up to that. We will continue to see companies that will cease to operate, be sold off, merge, transition into the next generation. But overall, the number of EIN numbers in our industry will reduce. It's an inevitable. There's just too many things going the other direction. So you're going to see a lot of new people come in the industry. We've had some clients that didn't know anything about making cabinets or furniture. And you have some young entrepreneurs that have gotten in this industry and they approach it from a completely different standpoint. And some of those ventures have been wildly successful. So you're going to have some new people that come in here and say, okay, well, we see a market, we see a need, we're going to supply that market, but we're going to be very intelligent about it. We're going to be very disciplined about it. We are going to scale and vertically integrate this. We're not going to be constrained with capital. We're going to hire the best people to do it. We're going to put it in the best geographic location. We've seen that. We had a client where a couple of ex-Google execs started a cabinet factory from the ground up. And guess what? That looks completely different than the one that is 30 miles down the street that's existed for the last 60 years. It's a completely different paradigm. You'll continue to see that. You'll continue to see more outsourcing where people figure out, okay, well, I can buy the same thing from not only a company, but somebody on the other side of a pond or in the Southern hemisphere, and they'll hold on to their market. But that import or outsourcing will continue to be a larger part. The raw goods, material goods, depending on some things that happen here soon, not making a political statement, but if some of the tariffs and stuff that we've had from lumber coming from Canada change, that would help out a lot. But you're going to see other areas come to town with their raw lumber and wood goods as well. Traditionally that has not been an issue outside of COVID, but as you continue to see forestry rules change, Hopefully the stuff is lifted and we could import more wood goods and lumber from Canada like we used to. Uh, the supply of those goods will also have a huge effect. So we're already seeing a huge, a frameless uptick in frameless cabinets and P-lam cabinets. You're going to see more engineered products become a place, that's very common in areas that they previously were not accepted. The mid to higher end is actually returning back to a lot of natural, wood, where it had gone painted, or P-lam heavily previously. There's tons of studies out right now showing that natural wood in the mid to higher end, of the markets is returning. So those are just a few high level things that we see.
On the flip side of that, what do you see staying the same over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, so that's a loaded question. The truth is, statistically, the only thing that is constant is change. And so if we look at it how we have traditionally, our market, uh, the people that work in the companies that make the stuff to the market, uh, where we get the materials from, government regulation, of how we make it, uh, all these top level things. I don't think that any of it will remain the same. I don't think that any of it if you speak in things that really make a difference, if you use the statistical term, standard deviations in a trend, or the root mean square, if you're looking at stuff on a graph, I don't think that any of it's going to remain the same. Um, the, the trend of the baby boomers retiring, you have, the smallest generation in existence, my generation, Generation X, that is going to run the world for a very brief period of time. That's at a very small scale because there's not many of us. Those changes, along with geopolitical changes, if you look at the affordability, of new homes, of durable wood goods, that affordability is not going anywhere. The amount of inflation that was created through COVID is so sticky that the interest rates haven't been able to fix it. The average family now has a net negative $700 per household outgo spend. They're paying $700 more for groceries, car, gas. The energy indexes and the grocery indexes have went up and they've stayed up. Wages have not normalized, to those things. Not only in the wood industry have wages not normalized to general industry, they haven't normalized to those indexes either. So I say these things is that really nothing is going to stay the same.
Well, that's very interesting, and I in a very you've shared a ton of information with a lot of detail to back it up, and that's what I think is so interesting to me. And I would love to spend many more hours with you because I was not expecting this much data, and there's so much more I'd love to drill into. But I really appreciate you taking the time you did to share with us the information we did today. I would love to have you on again. If people want to find out more about you, Joseph, to reach out or see how innovative wood process solutions can help them, what is the best way for them to reach out or find out more?
Sure. You can go to our website, http@iwpsolutions.com. There is a contact webpage you can fill out there. You obviously get a response. If you go there, you'll find out the rest of the contact information. I'm not going to publish my cell phone number on this podcast.
I'll link to that website in the show notes for everybody.
No, and if you're somewhere, there is a good chance we're going to be there, right? We attend a lot of the shows. We'll have a booth at IWF again this year. If you're going to a machine show or a trade show or something, there's a good chance that we're going to be there. We're KCMA members. So If you're going somewhere, just shoot me a connection on LinkedIn or go to the website, fill something out, and we'd be happy to see you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll link that for everybody in the show notes, and look forward to hopefully connecting with you at one of those shows this year myself.
Well, I appreciate it. And like I said, I'm so happy to be on here today, and I'm honored. And hopefully you're encouraged. Sometimes whenever we talk about these things, it seems negative, but the truth is, with good information, uh, we're really empowered to make the best of the future that we can. So hopefully
Absolutely.
there's a little bit of hope,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so
Thank you, Joseph.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verify in Field.